Hello and welcome to today's MicroStrategy Live webinar. My name is Monica Rodriguez. I work in Partner and Services Marketing here at MicroStrategy, and today we're hosting CapSpecialty Insurance. CapSpecialty is a leading provider of property, casualty, and liability insurance for small to mid-sized businesses in the United States. In today's webcast, you'll learn about the back-end use of business intelligence for this insurance company and how it successfully manages data to make more informed company-wide decisions. I'm going to switch the slide here. And Ken Wood, CapSpecialty's data team leader, and David Stamsta, senior BI data architect, welcome to MicroStrategy Live as our presenters today. Ken and David will talk about how MicroStrategy's unified platform and connector to Snowflake's cloud database allows them to quickly and effortlessly obtain historic data and what that means for the business overall. Also joining us is Saqib Mustafa, who is the Director of Product Marketing at Snowflake Computing, Inc. Snowflake is a cloud database company, and Saqib will discuss how MicroStrategy and Snowflake makes data management, specifically historic data, more successful. So Ken, David, and Saqib, thank you for joining MicroStrategy Live and allowing us to peek into how CapSpecialty manages their business intelligence platform and data warehouse. Ken and David, can you talk a little bit about CapSpecialty?
Sure. Hi, Monica. This is David Stamsta. So
Hi.
Our business has a goal to be the preferred specialty insurance provider for products in the small to medium business. And to achieve that goal for the business, we needed to identify and work more closely with our actuaries and underwriter from our data team perspective. And we found that to achieve the speed the business wanted and to help the business grow the way they needed to grow, our data team needed to work more closely. In working on that effort, we identified one of the biggest challenges was performance of our legacy data warehouse. Certainly the content needs to expand and grow, but to make that happen, we also needed performance. And this presentation today is going to talk about how we achieve that performance using both MicroStrategy, our existing BI platform, and then moving to a new underlying database platform for using Snowflake database. And then we'll go over some of the results and our future goals as well. Of course, it's always to grow the business.
Well, thank you so much. I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide.
And hi, this is Ken Wood, the data team leader for CapSpecialty. In our effort to address what our needs were for the data warehouse and BI delivery, we knew we were going to be adding a lot more data, which would be growth, and we needed something that could grow fast. And we knew we had to address speed issues because we were already encountering performance issues in our legacy data warehouse. So the challenge for us was how are we going to do that under a certain budget without adding a lot of money. So we're going to kind of address these three areas as we get into the next slides on how we address speed, growth, and budget in our solution. And David can add a few more details on this before we go to the next slide.
Yeah, we thought in analyzing the problem, trying to find the root cause, we looked at all different kinds of things. And if we could go to the next slide, that would be great. It kind of shows our wish list of performance improvements. We need to serve the data analysts quicker. We want to have a daily refresh of the data warehouse, improve the performance, consolidate reporting all into one platform. And specifically that one kind of refers to how in our current environment they were using MicroStrategy to download data out of our data warehouse and perform the analysis in Excel. And when we started partnering more closely with the business and looking at that effort, what they were doing with it, we found that the MicroStrategy tool was being underutilized. I could recreate some of the same analysis they were doing in Excel and do it for a larger set of data across more time. However, the performance wasn't there. we were hitting a wall with performance. We did all kinds of things looking at it, trying to address it from our existing platform, and we kept hitting a wall. Yeah, that's really kind of one of we kept trying to understand different ways to improve it without costing a lot of money. I mean, we considered things of even rewriting our data warehouse and redesigning the structures with our existing platform. We looked at adding more hardware, adding more capacity, and we just weren't coming up with solutions that were being effective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know if Ken, you have anything more to add?
I think we can go to the next slide that kind of leads into that. So what you see before you is what our before and after picture of our architecture. So we did our ETL from our transaction systems into a on-premises data warehouse, and we use MicroStrategy for BI. And one of our main complaint from the users was that the data warehouse was slow, and we dug into that and found that it wasn't actually the data. I mean, sometimes they would say data warehouse, sometimes they would say MicroStrategy, and we dug into it and saw that it wasn't MicroStrategy that was slow, it was the data warehouse itself. And we realized that there was multiple problems that could be addressed. David mentioned some of them would be schema redesign, could provide some incremental performance gains, database architecture changes, platform changes. We could double the hardware, which would have cost us a lot of money in licensing costs. So there was all different options that we knew would provide incremental performance gains, but the costs were pretty high from effort, budget, and time. So we were looking for possible solutions that might provide a quicker path to getting the users their data fast in the reporting tool MicroStrategy. So I'll turn that over to David, and he can talk about the after picture.
Right. So we'll talk about the migration effort in a few minutes, but we loaded the data into Snowflake. And we didn't really change anything in MicroStrategy. So we've been using MicroStrategy for 10 years. So we have a fairly sophisticated environment with a lot of changes over time that would be difficult to reproduce if we switched BI tool, or if we had to recreate reports in a different way or do the analysis in a different way. So what we found when we connected MicroStrategy into the Snowflake, the cloud environment, it worked right away. It was a little bit unbelievable, actually. The effort that it took was fairly significant, but it happened very quickly. When I say significant, the movement of our existing data warehouse up to the cloud. Actually, we can go to the next slide and talk about the migration effort. And Ken, if you want to talk about the data movement piece of it.
Sure. Yeah. So one of the challenges we had was for our proof of concept of Snowflake was we wanted to do a side-by-side evaluation of the entire warehouse running against MicroStrategy. So on-premises data warehouse versus Snowflake cloud data warehouse. So the challenge we had was how do we get all of that warehouse out there. Ultimately, we ended up having to write a custom ETL application to load that data out, basically through CSV files or comma delimited files. And a lot of that was due to the tool that we were using because we were trying to leverage our current technology, and the drivers and methods were not available for direct write. They did have direct write, but it didn't perform well, so the custom application we built was useful, and we still use it today to load data out to Snowflake. But we kind of had to build that for our proof of concept. So that was part of the effort. But like David said, we were able to do it pretty fast. and get us to a point where we had a full copy of the data warehouse. And then Dave, why don't you talk about Snowflake and MicroStrategy?
Sure. The SQL in Snowflake is ANSI compliant. You can see by this slide. So we didn't really have to change much on how the MicroStrategy engine generates SQL. When we did the migration at the time, there wasn't the Snowflake connector. In MicroStrategy, the database type was not Snowflake, so we had to use just a generic database. But it worked great. I did have to make a few changes to the VLDB settings within MicroStrategy to kind of overcome years of optimization in our in-house solution. So our MicroStrategy environment had been configured to create the temp tables, create indexes dynamically on the multiple passes of SQL, and then also to analyze statistics and drop the tables at the end. And some of the reports, some of the analysis, we were using custom groups, filtered metrics, and would generate multiple passes of SQL, sometimes over 100 passes of SQL. So all these optimizations took place in our existing environment. Removed those optimizations when we went to Snowflake. Simply undid them all and used, for the most part, the generic database connector. We also had to download the most recent ODBC driver from Snowflake, and credit to them that we would almost daily get changes and updates and corrections. We had some initial issues right in the beginning with some disconnects happening, but those were all resolved very quickly, and the two together worked very well.
Thanks. So, David, you mentioned report usage. Who exactly uses these reports?
Yeah, the largest consumer from a time perspective was the actuaries, and they were the ones we wanted to serve, mostly because, for this effort, because we were trying to grow new parts of the business, so they were using our historical data, doing analysis against the historical data to come up with new product lines, pricing strategies, and they would execute a query. It would take, they'd start it on a Friday, do some initial investigation, let it run over the weekend, come back Monday and find out that the results weren't what they were expecting, and they would need to make a change, and they would have to run it again. When we started implementing, just even in our proof of concept initially, the results were coming back in minutes. We actually thought we had only partially loaded the data warehouse at first up to the cloud, so we had to double check to make sure all the data was actually physically there. The results were coming back, were matching. We also did a parallel comparison of the existing data warehouse to our Snowflake. We had set up two MicroStrategy environments identical to each other, just connecting to the different databases to be able to fully vet out the environment. And we did have some challenges, of course. As great as it was, and as fast as it was, and as quickly we got it up and running, which really just took a few days from when we actually were starting the effort to when we started analyzing reports. Some of the challenges, I know Ken, you can talk about some of these first ones with the data type and syntax differences.
Yeah, so one of the first things we ran into was where there was a data type of number that in our incumbent database was by default allowed float precision numbers, and we discovered we had of course hadn't researched and learned all the syntactical and implementation of how SQL worked in Snowflake, so it took us a while to figure out what was going on. It turned out that the default implementation of number if you don't add precision in Snowflake is an integer, so it was truncating our data. So that was something, just a few things that were not a big deal, just things we had to be aware of, so that in our ETL and in the build of the tables, we made sure the precision coming from the source systems was added. Couple other ones we ran into were date in Snowflake not having time in that column data type. So we had to change those data types that were date to timestamp for them to not lose that time information. And then a few others that really haven't really affected us yet, but we're aware of them. We will probably have to work around them in the future. Would be the size of text fields being different between the incumbent database and the Snowflake, and then Snowflake does not support large objects. So we'll have to figure out a workaround for that. So that's just a bit of challenge in getting the data out there and making sure it all matches up. One other area we didn't look at in our proof of concept, we did not look at non-MicroStrategy reporting platforms, but ultimately we had to test some of those for some of the legacy reporting that still exists in the company, which we use the exact same ODBC connector but different reporting platforms than MicroStrategy, and we did not see good performance. But I've since tested multiple tools, and I've found a few tools that perform really well using the exact same set of drivers from Snowflake, the JDBC and ODBC drivers. So what we concluded was it really comes down to the design of the reporting tool itself, how it interacts well with the drivers and the connections out to Snowflake. The ones that I've seen work well do a lot of multi-threading and allow parallelism and allows the data to process quickly that way. And MicroStrategy obviously handles it really well. So that's the challenges for us is where we have legacy reporting tools that we're still trying to figure out how to make them perform well to Snowflake outside until we can get the reports migrated into MicroStrategy, which is the plan for the future.
Mm-hmm. And then with our MicroStrategy, I already spoke about removing some of the optimizations we had for our existing platform, and that worked fairly well. It was easy to test once we figured it out. There were a few other challenges that came along the way, and our MicroStrategy environment has hundreds of attributes, dozens of metrics, and it's been around for a while. So over that, 10 years, over the course of that time, things have changed, things have evolved. Some of the attributes have changed, grown, new tables added, old tables removed. So a lot of that exists in our environment, just kind of setting the stage for this next comment, where when we switched the environment to be the generic database, the SQL previously was generating with a create table statement that was create table select, and it would select the columns it needed from the database and then create the table using that result of the select set. When we switched it to go to Snowflake, the create table statement was using the MicroStrategy metadata, so the column aliases that were architected into the project. And what I found was, and the tables would get created, and then a select statement would be issued and then inserted into that table. The generation of that table and the create table statement, the column aliases used had changed over time. The actual data coming from the table in several cases was changed to varchar 200, but the metadata inside of MicroStrategy hadn't been kept up to date. And most likely because it wasn't actually being used to generate the create table statements. So we found out I had to go through quite a few of our attributes and update them, make them be in sync with our current database structures and column types and lengths. But once we overcame that, it was obvious what it was. It was easily solved. Everything worked seamlessly from that standpoint. Yeah. The next slide, kind of, if we go to that one, speaks to the optimizations that we removed. The on-premise database, we had MicroStrategy was leveraging indexes, partitions, the create tables that it made for the intermediate tables were having indexes generated dynamically and then analyze stats on it. When we started using the cloud, all of that went away. So we don't need any indexes. We don't need the analyze stats. The tables still get created, but we're using global temporary tables. So it happens dynamically in memory, and then they disappear at the end. So that was just phenomenal. I mean, it saves time also. It saves time from a management standpoint. The overhead it takes to manage that space on the in-house database, and Ken can talk more to that, but how we had optimized it over time. And still, we'd hit queries. Occasionally, I'd get a call, and a report that previously ran really fast suddenly was broken in our existing environment. Wouldn't run. You know, they'd wait for hours because that's what it sometimes took on other reports, so we wouldn't even get a call right away. They would wait hours, and then we'd get a call, then we'd investigate and find that either an index was broken or missing, or perhaps an aggregate table or partition wasn't correct. Now that's just gone away, and we don't get any more calls. It's been 3 months that we've over 3 months now that we've implemented in production the Snowflake environment. And that leads nicely to the next slide, actually. When we did our benchmarking, we picked the most difficult reports, the most important ones, the hardest ones, the longest running ones. The BBRs represent around 100 analysis reports that are generated on a monthly basis for a management to review. And those reports were being run in a cache for MicroStrategy because they took over 24 hours to execute all at once on our servers once the monthly load was done. Now, when we did the testing, it took 243 seconds, and that has since remained the same or diminished as we go through. The other report I wanted to point out was the planning data. That one specifically was being used to help the business understand the new products and new pricing and new direction that it wanted to go. And that report was taking a considerably long time. It'd be run over and over again with different business lines historically and different products to understand for the future products that we want to do. Now that takes 242 seconds. So overall, the performance improved 123 times faster. That was just in these most important reports. So the next slide shows the results after 3 months. So we took using Enterprise Manager and MicroStrategy, doing analysis, looking at the top 31 users, looking at the total number of rows they're returning back and the average query time compared to what we experience now. And that's just the average. You know, some of the top 5 reduced even more. So this really points to, if you draw a conclusion here, which is reduced time getting the data, doing analysis, more time doing analysis, more analysis being done as well. And those goes right back to our original goals that we wanted to have for the company, which was to empower actuaries and underwriters to conduct analysis of current and new products and maximize premiums while meeting market demand. So while I'm not showing anything that shows that in a monetary standpoint, we know by achieving these results that that's happening. Mm-hmm. So if you want to go to the next slide, that kind of sums it up as well. Those measurable business outcomes by reducing the time, being able to analyze that historical data, serving our business customers better, and leveraging new markets. All right. And we can go right to the next slide. So we had some testimonials collected from our users. And I just want to focus on, the transformational one. Of course, we found that to be true. Some of it was just unbelievable. People thought we had made mistakes and found out we hadn't. The one on the inner circle, I didn't notice a difference. So we investigated that one. First, I thought it was maybe because they were reading a cache report and we hadn't cleared the cache, so that the cache on MicroStrategy on the legacy environment. But we cleared the cache and that wasn't the issue. What was happening was the user was accessing a MART, a summary table. So it was a very small, quick query that was being accessed. In our Snowflake environment, we didn't bring over any summary tables. So it's actually, the queries go against the base data. Millions and millions and millions of rows of data, no aggregates needed, and you get the same results, and they didn't notice a difference. So to me, that's one of the more powerful statements. That now it sets the stage for us to be able to create real-time analysis against large sets of data through leveraging MicroStrategy's mobile platform, allowing executives to have a summarized KPI and drill down into the detail as well.
And who said these quotes that we're looking at?
These came from the actuarial team and from an executive within our company.
Thank you.
And I didn't have to coerce them at all.
Yeah, and this is Ken. So ultimately what this did for us is it removed a false perception that MicroStrategy was slow, and it was something we have to conquer this issue before we can move on to our other initiatives. We really want the company to start leveraging their BI technology. That MicroStrategy is cutting edge technology, and we have it in house, and we want to do some really cool things for the company. So using Snowflake was beyond our expectations of success. We were just hoping for something that was cheaper and faster, and it was phenomenally faster. And so this really set the stage for us to be able to work on things that will really provide more value to the company, new solutions, new initiatives, and move the perceived performance issues to the side now, so they're not a thing anymore to be dwelt on. We can move on to new initiatives.
So these are sort of your next steps in the company with data.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't want to go through them all, but just having growth in our data, like daily data. Before we had like monthly data, but still, we're going to do daily feeds, and we're going to grow it really fast because we're going to add a lot of data in the future, and we were really not confident that we were going to be able to perform well when we did that in our incumbent environment.
Yeah, if we were to change the grain of our data from monthly to daily, and suddenly that's that much more data, performance wasn't what it needed to be. What's going to happen when we move to that daily grain?
Because we were already fighting that perception, and there was a tendency to say, well, we need another BI tool. MicroStrategy is too slow. Well, that's not the problem. But now we can focus on those things to really do the things that are really going to provide the data the company needs. So that's overall, that's basically the big win for us is showing that Snowflake plus MicroStrategy gives us what we need and gives it to us fast. So
that's what this slide represents. Really, it's we're able to leverage. So that yin-yang symbol, it represents Snowflake and MicroStrategy together, and the pieces around the outside, all the benefits we get from it. The MicroStrategy environment has been developed over 10 years here. We have security, we have KPIs, we have measures, attributes, subject areas, projects. We're able to leverage all of that and without having to redo anything, but just simply to grow now. We're just allowed to grow. We can leverage the scalability of the MicroStrategy platform along with Snowflake, its ability to almost infinite ability to scale in size. The dashboards we can create now for some of our most important users to help the business grow. And we're not spending time running queries any longer that take hours, days. The connectivity was quick for us. This project was done in less than a month. And I'd say, correct me if I'm wrong, Ken, the biggest part, of course, was vetting it out and testing it, not the actual migration piece. And then the other largest part was moving our existing data warehouse data up to that cloud environment and writing the code to make that happen. Once that was complete, and now we're able to do it in hours on a monthly basis.
Yeah, and I have one comment I didn't bring up earlier about scalability. The numbers we were seeing is with Snowflake's compute set to small.
Oh, yeah.
And we still have it in production set to small because we haven't had a need to increase our compute, but you can scale it up a lot more. And with the click of a button, you can scale up your compute.
Right.
Speed, performance, availability. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was actually experimenting with that, Ken, a little bit on our monthly process, and I've got it set to run now, and from the MicroStrategy monthly process, and the whole thing, all the caches we create, everything takes 45 minutes. Set to small. When I set it to medium, it goes about 16 minutes faster. So the compute time is significantly reduced. And some of that time that didn't get reduced was when it writes back to the caches on MicroStrategy. And I didn't mention this earlier either. Some of the the data marts we generate, we still generate back on our legacy database. So we leverage MicroStrategy to execute the SQL in the cloud, and the results get delivered back to our legacy database. We're looking for ways to improve that, but we're also looking at ways of some of these marts we've been building we don't need any longer either. So.
And I understand you're upgrading to MicroStrategy 10 and shortly implementing
Yes.
mobile. Are you all excited about that?
Yes, we start Monday, actually. I've finalized the plans, and we actually start Monday. We did a dev test already, and we're going to redo the dev piece and then move into, we have 4 environments. We have dev, acceptance, test, and production. So.
Perfect.
Yep.
So Kib, I think we'll hand the mic off to you. Sakib, if you're
Thank
ready.
you very much, Ken, David, and Monica. Really enjoyed that conversation. So from our perspective, frankly, our collective MicroStrategy and the Snowflake value proposition is very simplistic, right? We want to get all the data in one place through Snowflake and MicroStrategy. Deliver faster analytics through reducing complexity in the data warehouse, increase performance, and stronger connectivity with BI tools that analysts use, like MicroStrategy, and the data warehouse itself, like Snowflake. We want to eliminate the overhead of managing and tuning the data warehouse, making connections easier to the BI tool, like MicroStrategy, and the data warehouse. And we want to do all of this at a fraction of the cost through the elasticity and the scalability of a cloud solution, so we can enable the spread of solutions like MicroStrategy Mobile, right? At the end of the day, MicroStrategy Mobile is also one of the initiatives CapSpecialty is looking at. And when you look at it, you're talking about maybe 5,000 agents using MicroStrategy Mobile to do their analytics. We can enable that through the scalability of a cloud solution.
Wonderful. So as we change slides here, I was just wondering, how does the solution ensure the security of data, especially in a customer-focused financial data?
That's a great question. So With regards to security in the cloud, Gartner predicts that by 2017, the number of enterprises with policies against placing sensitive data in the cloud will have dropped to 5%. So the argument about security in the cloud is now moot, and it's very quickly closing. What we have done inside the Snowflake environment and connecting to MicroStrategy is that we have raised the bar for security in the cloud data warehousing world. We enable security through our security capabilities and our offerings and our partnerships, and our support for HIPAA compliance and SOC 2 Type 2 reports. And it's all the way up to the application layer, not just the infrastructure layer. So we are making sure that all customer data is encrypted end-to-end, in transit, and at rest. And frankly, our approach eliminates the complexity and the burden for securing the data that other solutions place on the customer. And this gives the like of CapSpecialty the peace of mind to trust Snowflake and MicroStrategy to securely analyze their data. And at the end, like Bob Asensio from CapSpecialty said, we achieve better security with Snowflake than we could have economically performed on our own. And here we are handling major financial data, so we have to keep in mind that without security, our service offering will never succeed. So regarding this picture, I love telling this story. Our founders basically felt that there was a gap in the market for three important requirements. A solution had to be elastic and scalable and delivered as a service. It had to combine all types of data from CRM systems, financial systems, and other systems to semi-structured data like JSON, Avro, and XML. And it had to be easy to use for analysts and to connect through tools like MicroStrategy so that you're not tuning things and you're not reworking and basing your stuff on partitions and things like that, or creating indexes. So we started from the beginning. We decided not to use anyone's code. We created our own complete service and designed it for the cloud to scale up and down on a click of a button, like CapSpecialty just mentioned. And we delivered it as a service so that our partners like MicroStrategy can connect to it and easily use it without creating any sort of indexes, knobs to turn, and everything's done for you as a data warehouse. Next slide, please.
Right. And how does the MicroStrategy Snowflake connector enable performance?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So at the end of the day, MicroStrategy and Snowflake connector is connecting through a native connection from MicroStrategy to Snowflake. And we are providing, taking the SQL from MicroStrategy to connect to our environment, and we are doing a lot of the performance tuning automatically behind the scenes. So it ensures that the BI application user does not have to get involved in any of that, right? The tuning, the partitioning, all of that is, and indexing, all of that is done for you by the service itself. So all you have to do is basically just connect through that connector to the environment. And frankly, like from our perspective, MicroStrategy is a big part of our ecosystem, and we have to connect and enable the performance there to make it happen.
Perfect. So wanted to thank you all again, Ken, David, and Saqib. I really enjoyed understanding how everyone uses the joint business intelligence and cloud data warehouse solution. I don't have any further questions personally, so if we would like to open up the question and answer section of our presentation to the audience, we can definitely do that for the remainder of the time. Is that okay with everyone else?
Yep, that's good.
Yep.
Okay. So we do have one question this far from Joseph. He is asking if your environment is a cluster environment.
The MicroStrategy is not. We're not using a clustered environment with the MicroStrategy. The bottleneck again was you could take the queries that were being executed and get the slow performance. We were moving through the threads quickly, 20 threads at a time. That really wasn't the bottleneck. If we clustered, we perhaps might have gained, but we'd hit a wall on the database side. So Ken, if you have anything more to add from a database side.
The incumbent database was clustered, if that matters, but it was really more of the overall infrastructure that was set up. It was just we could have improved that, added more servers, added more CPU, and got incremental performance improvements, and then we could have redesigned things at the schema level and got incremental performance improvements when we were looking, so the clustering was part of the database environment in the incumbent side, which does add to some performance gains on the on-premises. So.
Mm-hmm.
And on the Snowflake side, there's no clustering. We are just delivered as a service.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So we have another question from Michael, and it says, what new functionality are you waiting to use in MicroStrategy version 10?
Yeah, so I'd really like to get the users involved with the data wrangling, some of our more power users. I'd like to be able to take our existing data warehouse data and combine it dynamically with data that they might supplement it with from either spreadsheets that they've acquired or other services or even out on the web. We're not there yet, but I believe I see the users doing that work manually in Excel. So the MicroStrategy was perceived as a barrier before, and now we've removed that barrier from getting the data, and the idea is to help them switch over to have MicroStrategy be the tool where their analysis is happening. That way we can leverage it for the whole company. We can show it on mobile devices and have it available in a more timely, universal, controlled way. Yeah.
Perfect. And then another question from Peggy is, what kinds of data structures are used? Star, Snowflake, 3NF?
Yes. So we actually didn't change our existing architecture from a conceptual standpoint or even the physical data structure of the tables. We use mostly a star schema. We have Snowflake pieces off of it, and we have some 3NF as well going on. Not a lot of that. We actually, that usually happens when we're first developing a subject area. We want access quickly, and then as time moves on, we'll model that into our data warehouse proper, into a Snowflake or star schema.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and we also did remove basically summary tables that were optimization. We didn't have a need for them anymore, so that those tables did not go to the cloud. So.
Right. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
And just to clarify one thing, by the way, Snowflake is not just in this case, Snowflake is not just a data structure too. We use the name Snowflake separately, so just to remove the confusion.
Not to confuse people,
yeah.
Right?
It does. Yeah. It's got an interesting story behind it.
Okay, so the next question is from Michael, and the question is, are you using MicroStrategy Mobile BI?
So we actually have licenses for it right now. We're on an initiative to start that.